Are you tired of self-doubt holding you back? Have you ever wished you could have the confidence to face your fears, go after your wildest dreams, and the tools necessary to live your best life? Hey there, amazing listeners. I'm your host and author of How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power, and I've made it my mission to help you break free from self-doubt and embrace confidence. Subscribe now and join us as we unlock the secrets to unshakable self-assurance. Let's dive in. Morgan Motsinger is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and advocate for mental well-being. She successfully built and scaled an interior design business and boutique retail home goods store, all while balancing life as a full-time caregiver for her special needs daughter with 2 other children. Wow. After 6 years, she shifted her focus, becoming a student in 2022 to pursue a degree in psychology with a minor in neuroscience. As the host of PS We Expire podcast, Morgan shares practical insights that transform her audience. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes. Well, what an interesting journey you have had navigating entrepreneurship with 3 children at the time. One was a special needs child. Growing and scaling this business, and now pursuing a degree in psychology. You just did a TEDx talk. You have a podcast. You're a busy lady.
It sounds like I'm busy, but sometimes I think, have I gotten anything done today?
Well, I think we all feel that way, to be honest. But it's such an interesting journey too. And, I've been on your podcast, so I've gotten to know your journey. I've introduced you to other podcast hosts as well. So I feel like, even though you're on the other side of the country, I feel like I know you, right? And I watched your TEDx talk, by the way, so powerful, so inspiring. And, there's a lot of people, Morgan, that, they're, building businesses, and it's not easy when you're a parent to navigate these building and scaling of a business and everything that goes along with it, and to also have some work-life balance. So I know you talk about that a lot as well, and mental well-being. I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge that can help people navigate these challenges. And ultimately, I think a lot of people are, searching for this. They're trying to find their deeper purpose and meaning and success in business and life. But then they also have a family. It's not easy. So I would love a little bit of insight from you if we could. Just how you did that, how you made that possible. Maybe it could help somebody else today.
Sure. The 2 big things that come to mind are flexibility and support. So there is no way that I would have been able to do what I did without having a big support system, physical support, mental support, emotional support. We live in a culture that is highly individualistic, that is like, you can do this yourself. If you can, then you should. Don't ask other people for help. And that is one of the things that creates chronic stress, and it creates such a sense of, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. How is everybody getting this stuff done? And one of the things that I really like to do is to look at the people that I really admire in spaces that I'm also interested. So speakers or podcast hosts. And then I pay attention to who is on their team. So some of these, people that we compare ourselves to actually have an incredibly robust support system for all different areas of life. And so we really can fall into a trap of comparing ourselves to people who have much more built out support systems than we do and wonder, how in the world did they do it all? Well, they don't. So you really have to pay attention to what resources you have that can contribute to you being able to reach the goals that you're setting for yourself. And the other one that is so important is flexibility. I know having morning routines is like such a hot topic. Everybody's like, you spend 5 minutes doing this and 20 minutes doing this. When you have kids, routine, especially in the morning, is almost impossible to hang on to because someone's always got an upset tummy or you didn't cook their eggs right or whatever. So having flexibility with yourself, number one, is going to make sure that you don't feel frustrated when things are not going the way that you want them to go. But it also means that you set up systems in your business that allow you to be flexible in your personal life. There's not a clear separation or delineation between a professional life and a personal life. There just isn't. It's a false dichotomy. And the way that we are in one space is always going to influence the way that we are in another space. So having the flexibility, setting up systems in order to make the flexibility possible between those two realms is super duper important.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, you're a great example of this, right? Because I remember what it was like. So during COVID, my husband and I decided to start a business. We were both working full time. We started our business. And by the way, we also have a daughter, right? She was 3, 4, maybe 4 something at the time. And by the way, I was also pursuing an MBA. So yeah, I'm not ever one to say, oh, don't do this and that and the other, because I'd be a total hypocrite, right? I'm sometimes I feel like a really bad example of balance in my own life. And this is something that I've learned to kind of mediate, right? Because you have to have some type of balance. I'm an workaholic, perfectionism, all of that stuff, right? And for such a long time, I always thought, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And you'll wear yourself out so quick. And again, to your point, it's so easy to compare yourself with others. And ultimately, we know that comparison is not only the thief of joy. People say that a lot. For me, it was the thief of confidence. As I was comparing myself to others, other high-level entrepreneurs, just like you're saying, I started to feel less and less and less worthy, less confident, less able. The lies we tell ourselves too, Morgan, can really be very detrimental to our worthiness and overall self-esteem, don't you think?
Absolutely. One of the best pieces of advice that I got from a coach was just this little sentence: you get to decide what enough is. And I don't know why, but it completely blew my mind, because like you said, like the comparison to the effort that other people are putting forth, you don't get to peek behind the scenes of those at all. You have no clue what things are happening in their lives that are enabling them. You don't know the connections that they have. You don't know the support system they have. And so if you can decide for yourself what enough is, that is in alignment with your own values, there's the comparison then evaporates, because you know that you are working and moving in your life in accordance with what is most deeply important to you. And that's some of the most important work that not just entrepreneurs can do, but that humans can do, is to figure out what those things are that are deeply important to us and then align our lives with those things.
Such wisdom right there, right? It's about defining your own version of what success is, right? What's important to you, not somebody else, right? I want to talk a little bit about your family. Entrepreneurship and resilience is a topic that you speak on a lot. Your TEDx talk, so moving. Again, I encourage everybody to watch your TEDx talk. It's on YouTube. To go into the mind and heart of what it's like to be you. But it's not only just you. You represent a group of people that is very underrepresented. one of the things that I have realized from just knowing you and hearing more about your story and journey is that there's a topic we don't talk about enough. And while I talk a lot about confidence on the show, personal development, and resilience, we don't talk about the resilience on this deep, deep level. But I want to talk about that today. So, as you're growing your business and your family, you're caring for a special needs child. I don't hear people talk about that enough. And I can't imagine the pressure that you felt and you were under. Can we touch on that a little bit?
Sure. The pressure that all parents feel to keep their child safe cannot be understated. It seems like job one for parents is keep your child safe. And when my daughter was 3, we got a diagnosis for her that essentially told us, you're not going to be able to keep her safe. You're not going to be able to do anything to prevent the progression of this disease. This is going to happen to her. And with that perspective shift, not just for our first child, but understanding this is actually true for for the rest of our kids too, our 2 other children, that can't be my number one job to keep them safe. Yeah, when they're little and it feels like every day you're like on high alert, you have hypervigilance just to keep them alive, stop putting all the gross things in their mouths and all of that kind of stuff, but really what could I see is the goal as a parent for my child. What do I want to focus on? And the 2 things that came to mind that would always be true for my daughter, regardless of her abilities, were that I wanted her to know how deeply she is loved. And I wanted her to be able to participate every day in things that made her feel happy and made her feel alive and made her feel connected with other people. When I realized that for her, I applied that same framework to myself. I said, okay, if my worth and my value are not dependent on what I'm able to contribute in the world or any quote unquote metrics of success, because I have this amazing child who would never have a job, who would never graduate from college, who wouldn't even graduate from middle school. She ended up passing away when she was 14. If I have this view of her and her worthiness just because of who she is as a human being, that must be true for myself. That must be true for everybody else on the planet. And so I shifted the focus so much in the same direction that I did for her. I did that for myself. How do I feel connected and alive in my life? What kinds of things can I do every day that contribute to that? And how can I feel loved? And how can I show love to other people? And that became it was like everything else gets filtered through that. That became a standard of what I would and would not allow in my life. And that really absolutely informed how I built my business, how I work in my business, how I treat my clients, all of that. The level of compassion and empathy that is directed outwards toward other people is also directed inwards towards myself.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack right there. And there's something I want to share with you that I've never actually shared publicly before. So growing up, my best friend, she had cystic fibrosis, and that's a genetic disease you're born with, right? At the age of 16, she passed away. So we grew up our entire lives together, and we knew that the clock was ticking, essentially. Her health started to deteriorate, and it was when she was in high school, she had to become homeschooled. And finally, her health started to slip even more. And it was really hard seeing your friend like this, right? And as a teenager, you're so full of life. You have the whole world ahead of you, as it were, right? But I saw a different side of life at a really young age that not a lot of people experience. And as a teenager, she was a year or two younger than me. I remember her health was slipping to the point where, I would stay over her house. I would pat her back to try to get clear her lungs. I helped her with her feeding tube, that type of thing. And it showed me a different side, just like you're saying, of what life is and worthiness is. I knew she would never be able to graduate high school. She never had a boyfriend. She had never been kissed. She missed out on so many impactful life moments. But she was always worthy. And just like what you're saying, that really shaped the way I view just human beings in general. I look at every human being as if they are worthy because they are. And it's a profound sense of love when you can see someone not for what they do or what they quote unquote contribute, right? Because that's often how we view the value of other human beings, of what they contribute, right? It's not necessarily that. It's just being. That is so key. And I recently watched a documentary about this as well, and it was so powerful. He was a international teacher, and he was teaching in his classroom in Shanghai. And he said, every person is a worthy person. Every person has value. And he was teaching this to his classroom of kindergartners. And I just thought that was so beautiful because we're not taught this, Morgan. We're not taught this. So I want to take a moment and teach this because I don't think we can hear this enough. Could you go into depth a little bit about that too, from your perspective?
Yeah. The question that I tend to ask about why am I not being taught these things? It makes me wonder who benefits from me not believing this? Who benefits from me not believing that I'm worthy? There's a lot of interesting studies around happiness that started, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Positive psychology became a real experimental field of study. And something that they have discovered through many empirical research experiments is that we all kind of come with a baseline level of happiness, or you could say contentment or well-being or satisfaction with life. That's genetic. So like 50% is kind of determined by genetics. 10% is determined by some of the things that we are told are successful. So where we live, the job that we have, the amount of money that we have, only 10%. And the other 40% is made up of things that we are intentional about. So the ways that we exercise autonomy, the way that we find meaning in our lives. And so when we think about why aren't we being taught this, it's because of who controls the 10%, who is telling you that the 10% is actually 90%. You're going to be happier once you reach X level in your company, or when you reach X amount of dollars in your life, or you have X amount of things or the size of your house. So when we can really, really understand that our deep satisfaction with life, our subjective well-being is actually based on something completely different than that, we start looking at the world differently. And I had the benefit of having a daily reminder in front of me in this child, in my Annie, that the 10% really didn't matter very much. And I really consider that a huge advantage, not just in business, for sure in business, but just in life in general, that I had this physical little amazing person that was always forefront of my mind, thinking about what was really important in life. And when we are thinking about this issue of worthiness, it has to start with ourselves, because the more I found this in my own life, and I've come to observe this in other people, the more judgmental and the lack of empathy that I see that goes out from people, it really is just a reflection of an internal narrative. So if we don't believe that we're worthy of love, we don't believe other people are worthy of love, because they're other terrible humans just like us, you know? And so the work that we can do to really unpack our own worthiness, to really work on developing so much self-compassion, to really dig into the parts of ourselves that perhaps have been off limits, or we have said are bad about ourselves, and get to know ourselves on a deep level, that only impacts the way that we positively move through the world and view other people. And one of the ways, this is why I love entrepreneurship so much, is that entrepreneurship was like the pathway to deep self-awareness and introspection, because there were so many things that I was bumping up against all the time that I didn't know how to do, and didn't even know what was required. And so through the journey of failing over and over and over again, and recognizing, oh, that the failure doesn't actually diminish me at all. It doesn't mean anything about my worthiness. It doesn't mean anything about what I'm capable of. It means that I'm learning. The world was open to me when I stopped being so worried about what failure meant about me, that I was always worthy of love. I was always worthy of good things. I was worthy of growing and learning. And I mean, when you have that perspective shift, it's like, what can't you do then? Really?
Wow. So much wisdom there. And you know, on a recent podcast I had, the guest said something similar. Entrepreneurship is the ultimate path to personal development and growth. For sure. Right. It teaches you so much about yourself. And, you know, it's not easy. There's a reason why a lot of startups fail, a lot of businesses fail. Part of that is that we have a convoluted sense of what success is too, to your point, right? And again, that comparison to other people, other businesses, other companies. It is the ultimate path to personal development and growth for sure. I have learned so much about myself since I started my entrepreneurship journey, and it's just truly incredible, right? But one of the things that I like about what you're saying and talking about as well is that when you know, your environment essentially is a mirror, right, of you, internally, right? So exactly what you're saying. If you feel that you're a worthy person, you're going to see worthiness in others. If you feel like you're a successful person, you're going to see success in others, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to attract that type of clientele, that type of partner as well. One of the things that, you know, has really stood out to me on my personal development journey and entrepreneurship journey is that way I treat other people. It's the golden rule. You treat other people how you want to be treated. You love them. You respect them. I use the word honor. I honor other people as I would want to be honored myself. You see the light in someone else, you honor it. You love it. You shine it, right? You embrace it. You don't necessarily try to change it. You just honor it. And when you do that, it transforms the way you see people. So I think it's pretty common, unfortunately, that a lot of people wake up and they think, who do I get to get from today?
Mm-hmm.
I have the complete opposite philosophy. My first thought when I wake up in the morning is, who do I get to give to today? Again, it's an honoring of somebody. When you put someone else on a pedestal, it changes your mindset from that get to give and from wanting to already having. There's nothing somebody has that I feel like I deserve without first honoring that other person and loving that person. And when you change that mindset and really see that person as that, I believe your success increases. It's a mirror of your own internal view of yourself. What do you think about that?
I think that this is not a one-time thing. Like the idea that, yes, now I have arrived and I wake up every morning and I think I just love everybody. It's so not true. Like I still struggle with this. Like, what can I get from you? I still struggle with you morons doing this thing and you're choosing this. Like it's not a one-time thing. And that is one thing that actually like really bothers me about so much of the self-improvement and self-development and some of like the spiritual communities is like it paints this picture that once you've arrived at this enlightenment or whatever, like you don't struggle with these things anymore. And I just want to say that I think that healing and that growth is actually that you can recognize the times when you're still doing that and that you can talk to yourself in a way that isn't mean. You know, a phrase that I say to myself a lot is, "Oh, Morgan." You know, it's just this like it's this way of talking to myself that is just like, "Oh, silly Morgan," still like getting caught up in these things that you know aren't true. You know, and so I just want to encourage people that the ideal of having a perfect work-life balance, this ideal of seeing everybody else always as just this other, you know, human walking around in these funny, bumbling human bodies and, you know, being compassionate all the time. This ideal means that we're not going to do it perfectly. And that is okay. That is okay. The journey towards more confidence, the journey towards more wholeness, the journey towards better well-being is in the spaces where you recognize the patterns that you're always been part of and you change them. It's the recognition of the times when you're less than generous towards other people. It's the times when you recognize like, oh, I can feel in myself now this dynamic. I'm trying to extract something from that person. It's this awareness of the times when we're not doing that. And that is when choice is introduced into the equation. And to me, one of the highest indicators for myself, because autonomy is a really big value of mine, but that to me, the greater well-being occurs when I have the awareness in the moment of a choice to choose, a choice to act differently. That's huge to me. And so I think that is probably true for a lot of people too. It's like when I can have more control over my life, my inner life, is when I really feel good.
Yes, absolutely. Right. It's always a choice. Sometimes we don't recognize it as a choice, right? And that's okay. No one is perfect, right? We're not saying that it's going to be a switch and one day it's going to completely change and you'll never go back and revert.
I mean, I wish that was true.
Why don't you develop a switch, right? I wish it was true, but it's not. And it's okay. It's about just continual progression and not having all the answers right, you know, from the start. Nobody does.
Yes.
And that's okay. Nobody expects you to. But, you know, to your point, I'm sure that this journey that you were on with your daughter, Annie, changed a lot of the way you, again, saw other people. It probably changed the way you went about business. It probably changed the way you saw your purpose. What was your version of success before Annie?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think my version of success was so dependent on the way that other people saw me. So I was a stay-at-home mother for a long time. And so in that context, what success looked like was a patient perfect mother, a clean house all the time, nutritious meals for my children all the time. I never raised my voice to them or got after them, but I also, had a firm hand because you got to do that. It was very, very dependent on the culture that I was raised in, the community that I was raised in to tell me what a good woman and a good mother and a good wife was like. And so I don't think that I even had asked myself what success looked like to me. I was just doing the same thing that probably all humans do, that you operate on your childhood programming and you just kind of like keep the pattern going. And when we got Annie's diagnosis, obviously it changed a lot of things, but it really uprooted what I thought success was in the context of being mother. And I touched on that a little bit about the major shift for me in understanding that one of my roles as a parent wasn't primarily just to keep my child safe, but there were so many things that unraveled as a result of her diagnosis that really upended the way that I viewed my role as a mom and what I was capable of doing as a mom and a wife and a friend. It impacts all of our relationships when you have a child that can't do things the way that everybody else's children can do them. It can really take an emotional toll on you, but it also is very lonely. It's very, very lonely because the activities that I saw my friends participating in, I couldn't because of my child's limited needs. And so I would say that the definition of success that I have now is so much less dependent on external circumstances. And this is one of the things that I talk about in my TEDx talk, is that this concept that we have about hope, that the hope that we have for a future, the hope that we have for our families, the hopes that we have for ourselves, primarily, typically are based on external circumstances. I hope that things are going to get better. I hope I'm going to do better on this test or get a different job, or that this relationship will work out. And what I challenge people to do is to, instead of pinning our hopes on external circumstances, actually turn the hope inward and think more about what is possible in ourselves. Because there's so much externally that we have zero control over. We have no control over at all. And so if we pin our definition of success on external circumstances or hope on external circumstances, it's completely out of our hands. Because you can't change other people. You will come across things in your life that you can't do anything about, whether it's a diagnosis or a breakup or whatever. And so I just want to tell your listeners that if you can instead really turn your hope and your attention and your definition of success onto an inward reality, that things will change for you. And then it won't matter so much what's happening in the external world, because that will always be up and down. But you become someone who is resilient. You have inner resources to deal with the ups and downs of your external world. You become someone who is compassionate towards yourself, empathetic towards others. And that makes all the difference. This is the only thing that we really have some semblance of control on in our lives.
Absolutely. I love that. It starts within, right? It starts within. So this is such a powerful lesson for so many people. If you could give the audience one thing, whether it's an actionable, something they can do today to help them, or something they can do to improve their lives. Maybe a lot of people are listening to this and they're struggling, right? Maybe they're struggling because for most of our lives, have been told and programmed, to your point, to focus outwardly. Get this degree, get this person to like you, connect with this person, get this job. You're not worthy unless you have this type of salary, right? And a lot of people are right there right now. What is one piece of advice you can give somebody that can help them today to shift that paradigm?
Just one.
You can have more than one.
Okay. Okay. I'll whittle it down to two. The two that have helped me the most. The first one, and don't be turned off by this just by the word, is meditation. Because really what this means is that you are finding practices that bring more mindfulness into your life. And like, what do I mean by mindfulness? Okay. Mindfulness is really paying attention, being very present in your external world, and being attentive to what's happening inside you. So if you are interested in starting a meditation practice, for example, or introducing more mindfulness into your life, I would recommend just sitting on a chair, set your timer for 3 minutes. You can do this for 3 minutes, turn off notifications on your phone, tell everybody, leave me alone. I'm doing something. Just for 3 minutes, just notice your breath. Notice the places in your body where you're holding tension. I hold mine in my shoulders. Okay. And you take deep breaths and noticeably relax all the parts of your body and just see what comes up. You're not trying to stop thinking. You're not trying to turn the thoughts off. Like a lot of people are like, I'm not going to meditate because I can't stop this, thought train. It's none of that. It really is just noticing what's happening. So introducing more moments of mindfulness in your life where you're just noticing, you're being very present to what is happening in your inner world. This is what ends up creating more choice in our life. And the second thing is to play more. We're adults now. And so we don't do things like the hopscotch, and we don't do things like finger paints and stuff like that. And if you can introduce things back into your life that are playful, that don't have any weight of perfection on them, it really helps you kind of loosen up, and it greases the gears on your curiosity. And those are the two things that I would say are super helpful if you're wanting to reduce anxiety, reduce stress, bring more presence to your life, more mindfulness to your life, for those two things.
I love that. And both are present-minded activities, right? This is so powerful because we tend to live in the future or the past, and we completely negate the present. And it's called a present for a reason, right? We need to be mindful and have joy in the moment. Find those moments of joy. And it looks different for everybody. For me, it's podcasting. I think it's for you too. I could be wrong, but I think we both love it, right? Yeah. This gives me joy. So I do it. And you lean into the things that give you joy. You lean into the things that anchor you to the present. And I like what you said too about just being conscious and aware of what's happening, what's going on. Where do you feel things, right? This is so important so that you understand what's important to you, not what's important to other people, not what your mom or dad wants, not what your neighbor says is great or your boss or anybody. It's about what do you want, what makes you feel fulfilled, what brings you joy, and leaning into those things. So I love that, Morgan. Great advice. I totally agree. Morgan, I'm sure everybody is going to want to connect with you. Please let us know what are the best places to reach you at.
Sure. My website, morganmotsinger.com. You can also watch my TEDx talk on YouTube. Just search Morgan Motsinger TEDx. I hang out on Instagram a lot, and my podcast is called P.S. We Expire, where we have unfiltered conversations about hard things and practical ways to bring more well-being and joy into our lives.
Love that. Thank you so much, Morgan. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today for this episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. Guys, we're here multiple times a week, and we love hearing from our listeners from all around the world. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite platform. I read each review personally, and it means so much to me to hear the words from our listeners about what they've enjoyed and how this podcast has helped them transform their lives. Nothing brings me more joy than that. So thank you, everyone, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care. And that's a wrap for this episode of Grasp Confidence. Thank you for joining me today and investing in yourself. Remember, building confidence is an ongoing journey, and each step you take brings you closer to the empowered, fearless version of yourself that you were born to be. Don't forget to visit my website, follow me on social media, and purchase my book, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Stay confident.